have such sights to show you.
In the twisted, nightmarish world of Hellraiser, where pleasure and pain are forever bound, one Cenobite's journey stands out above the rest. Merkova, the fierce leader of the Lucky Six, faced unimaginable battles, fought with unrelenting strength, and ultimately met a tragic end that would set the stage for something even darker.
We'll tear your soul apart.
But it's not just her story that haunts us. It's how her death sparked a deadly reckoning with none other than Pinhead himself. Pinhead, the iconic figure of torment and suffering, would not let Merkova's demise go unanswered.
We want the man who did.
Welcome back to your nerdy show. I'm your host, Spoiler Master. Today, we're diving deep into the story of Merkova, the Cenobite, who led the Lucky Six into battle against the Harrowers and the explosive aftermath of her tragic fall. This is a tale of power, pain, and vengeance, one that forever altered the fate of the Cenobites. So grab your puzzle boxes and get ready for a Hellraiser tale like no other. Let's unravel the story of Merkova, her final moments, and how it all led to Pinhead's blood-chilling vengeance.
You solved the box. We came. Now you must come with...
What is a Cenobite? At the heart of the Hellraiser franchise is the mysterious and terrifying group of beings known as the Cenobites. These beings are far from human, but they were once people, tortured and transformed into grotesque, otherworldly entities. The process that turns a human into a Cenobite is a brutal one. These individuals are not merely victims of their own torture. They are brainwashed and remade to serve as instruments of suffering for all eternity. The Cenobites exist in a realm known as the Labyrinth, a nightmarish extra-dimensional space where they are bound to their mission, to inflict pain and torment on those who summon them. The summoning happens through the solving of one of the Lemmerschan's boxes, a puzzle box that promises pleasure, but when solved, opens a portal to the labyrinth, calling the Cenobites into the material world. The phrase "no tears please, it's a waste of good suffering" captures the essence of these beings. They do not see suffering as a punishment, but as an eternal part of existence. Though the Cenobites were once human, they have now transcended humanity, taking on otherworldly appearances and abilities. Each Cenobite is unique, marked by their gruesome physical transformations that reflect the pain they've endured and the duty they have to inflict on others. Among these Cenobites, one of the most compelling stories is that of Merkova.
Apes us.
Backstory of Merkova. Merkova's story begins with a group of Cenobites known as the Lucky Six. As their leader, Merkova stands apart from other Cenobites, not only because of her position, but also because of the challenges and tragedies she faces throughout her journey. The Lucky Six were summoned during an event called the Call to Arms, which marked a pivotal moment in the battle between two powerful factions, the Cenobites and the Harrowers. The Call to Arms saw the solving of the puzzle chamber by a figure known as the General. The solving of this puzzle resulted in the summoning of the Lucky Six, including Merkova, Turpis, Haloblades, Cattleskull, Fulgur, and Cowboy. Their arrival marked the beginning of a larger conflict that would shape the fate of the Cenobites and the Harrowers. The Lucky Six were tasked with a mission that seemed like an inevitable clash of powers. They were destined to face off against the Harrowers, a group that opposed the Cenobites and sought to free a powerful entity. Mortmame was a goddess-like figure who held the power to reshape the world in ways unimaginable. The Cenobites, on the other hand, were bound by their duty to maintain the order of suffering and torment in the labyrinth. However, when the Lucky Six arrived at the Egg Museum, a critical location in this war, they found that the Harrowers had already succeeded in their goal. Mortmame had been released, and the balance between the two factions was thrown into chaos. The Lucky Six found themselves in a struggle for survival, a battle that would have disastrous consequences for Merkova and the encounter with Zinc. As the Lucky Six arrived at the Egg Museum, the Harrowers were in the midst of celebrating their victory. The release of Mortmame had given them an overwhelming sense of power, and they were prepared to do whatever it took to secure their dominance. Among the Harrowers was Winston Gage, a member who was particularly attuned to the supernatural. able to see through the eyes of others. Zinc, the pet cat of the Harrowers, was caught in the crossfire of this escalating tension. The small creature wandered toward Merkova, who, in her cold and calculated manner, picked him up, threatening to kill him. However, what Merkova did not expect was that Winston Gage, through his connection to Zinc, managed to switch places with the cat, catching Merkova off guard. This move proved to be a critical mistake on Merkova's part, as Winston Gage was quick to strike. Gage, wielding a divine axe, attacked Merkova with deadly precision, severing both of her arms. This injury proved to be more than just physical. It was a turning point in the battle that would reshape Merkova's fate. The rest of the Harrowers quickly joined the fray, and what followed was a brutal confrontation that would prove disastrous for the Lucky Six. The Harrowers' power and Ovid's role. The Harrowers were not merely skilled fighters, they had a unique advantage, one that played a significant role in their victory. A creature known as Ovid had been created by Mort Mom to bolster the courage of the Harrowers and grant them additional powers. Ovid, however, was far from a typical ally. This creature had the ability to duplicate itself, creating distractions that would disorient the Lucky Six. Ovid's most immediate effect was through its flatulence, which created a noxious cloud that distracted all the Cenobites, except for Merkova. This proved to be a fatal mistake for the Lucky Six, as it allowed Lucinda and Lavinia, two members of the Harrowers, to quickly overpower the remaining Cenobites. Using their divine rope, they were able to tie up the Lucky Six, rendering them helpless. In the chaos that followed, the Harrowers managed to dismember the 5 Cenobites, leaving Merkova as the sole survivor. She was now alone, gravely wounded and facing the overwhelming power of the Harrowers. Merkova's final stand and kidnapping of Bunny Benedict. Despite her serious injuries, Merkova refused to yield. The pain of losing her fellow Cenobites only fueled her desire for vengeance. In her final act of defiance, she kidnapped one of the Harrowers, Bunny Benedict, and retreated back to Hell, seeking refuge in the infernal realm. Merkova's actions were not driven by fear or a desire to escape. She was determined to ensure that the Harrowers would pay for their role in the destruction of the Lucky Six. But as she sought to protect herself and Bunny Benedict, Merkova was not long for this world. Her injuries were grave, and her fate was sealed. Pinhead's mourning and Merkova's death. When Merkova arrived in Hell, she was dying. Pinhead, one of the most iconic figures within the Cenobite hierarchy, found her in her weakened state. He removed the divine longsword that had been embedded in her stomach by Marty's 7 birds, the weapon that ultimately sealed her fate. Merkova's death was swift after this, and Pinhead mourned her passing in a rare moment of vulnerability. Pinhead's grief was not just for the loss of Merkova, but for the broader implications of her death. He knew that the Harrowers had orchestrated this, and he vowed to make them pay for the loss of one of his own. Pinhead promised that the souls of the Harrowers would suffer for Merkova's death, ensuring that her sacrifice would not be forgotten. In the aftermath of her death, Pinhead took over the torturing of Bunny Benedict in Hell, ensuring that the Harrowers' actions would have consequences. For Merkova, the pain she endured and the sacrifices she made would not go unnoticed, even if it meant ensuring that those who caused her downfall would experience their own suffering for all eternity. Our nerdy thoughts. Merkova's story is one of tragedy, loyalty, and vengeance. As a leader of the Lucky Six, she faced off against the Harrowers with determination and ferocity, but in the end, she could not escape the power of her enemies. Her transformation into a Cenobite and her eventual death speak to the unyielding nature of the Cenobites, bound as they are to a cycle of suffering and retribution. Merkova's death, while tragic, serves as a powerful reminder of the eternal struggle between the Cenobites and their enemies. Pinhead's vow to make the Harrowers pay for her death ensures that Merkova's legacy will live on, even in the afterlife. Her story is a haunting reflection of the Hellraiser universe, where pain, pleasure, and suffering are eternal, and the boundaries between life and death are never quite as clear as they seem. And that's the story of Merkova, the Cenobite leader. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want to hear more about the Cenobites and the Hellraiser universe, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We'll be diving into more deep dives on Hellraiser and other dark horror universes, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching.
No, don't do that!
Go to hell!
Now what the hell?
Heck, I'll laugh anyway.